Well. Good fucking morning. How's it going? Why the hell you up so early? You know what? The weird thing isn't that you're up so early. The weirdest part about you being up so early is that you're watching me to start your day off. That's kind of fucked up. In a way. It's kind of messed up. Like, I'm the first thing you watch in the morning.
So backtracking, because I don't want to miss out on this.
What's up?
What she wrote was, I don't want to live in a world where those with power impose their evil intent on the masses and not face any
Man, ain't nothing messed up about that.
Without God, people can easily escape human justice. I can't buy into that. She also made this point about, you realize, because somebody mentioned pedophile priests, and she's like, you realize, yes, pedophiles are immoral, but there are pedophiles who escape from human justice, and therefore it's good to know that God's justice is eventually going to get them. And this becomes the basis of why she believes. And so here was my response, and I'll just read it. The kind of world you want to live in has no bearing on what kind of world you do live in. If this is your principal objection to worldviews that don't include some cosmic justice in them, if you'll forgive the...
I gotta be to work at 10-ish, 10:15 or something like that. So I can't be in here that long this morning.
Remark, you really don't understand what you're talking about. Life isn't fair, and the desire for justice that you express is one of the key foundations of most every religion. We're all aware that sometimes good goes unrewarded and evil goes unpunished. And so some justice seekers invent a security blanket to ensure that they aren't mired in depression. It allows them to avoid facing the harshness of an indifferent reality. Whether it's heaven and hell or karma dictating infinite rebirths, it serves the same purpose. Some of us prefer to actually face reality. Some of us realize that there's no good reason to believe that the universe is anything other than indifferent to our existence and our perceptions of good and evil. Some of us realize that dealing with reality on reality's terms is the only way to make any real improvements in the situation. Life isn't fair.
Searching for a beach vacation? Finds it at Verbo. They search millions.
All right, Brother Polite.
Peace.
Welcome to Vlad TV.
Feeling welcome. What's going on?
Yeah, man. Big fan of what you do.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so this is our first interview. So let's start from the very beginning. You had a very kind of interesting upbringing.
What happened? What did I do? I pressed something I shouldn't have pressed.
What exactly happened to your mother and father?
Well, my father, he raised myself and my sister up until the point of age 8. Then he walked out on us. My mother, she died the week that I met her. I met her when I was 17 years old, and I didn't know she was suffering from cancer. So I had my 7 days with her, and I never really got a chance to expound on some of my discontentment with her not being in my life, because though she wasn't there for me, I had to be there for her. So she passed away when I turned 17. In between that time, I was in shelters, group homes, homeless at one point. Of course, joined the gang, Crips, from Brownsville, Brooklyn, and that's kind of how that whole thing worked out. Wound up being locked up for murder, attempted murder, and I found my way through, transcended all the adversity, and became conscious.
So your mother left early on, or?
Yeah, well, what happened was my father was a bit abusive,
Okay.
For what I can gather, because I didn't know much about my mother until I got older. And it was said that my mother would die if she had me. And they believed, because of the violent interactions from time to time with my father and her, that perhaps my father may have intimidated her into having me. But my father's mother, my grandmother, who I was raised by, for the most part, that I call moms, she later told me, before she died, when she was in a nursing home, she told me that my father was the one actually saying abort me. And my mother did everything she could do, despite both families saying to get rid of me, to have me. And then once she had me, she gave me over to my father.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your father was around until you were 8, and then he left.
He left. He lost his job. I believe he's depressed. He suffered from alcoholism at the time, so he's a bit violent. And I believe he was overwhelmed by the social pressure of not being able to respond as a man in the household. And I believe that's the reason he most likely left.
So at 8 years old, you had no mother and father, essentially.
Yeah. They called me alien when I was in school.
Alien?
Yeah, they
Why
said
is that?
how the hell I don't got a mother and father? Everybody at least had one.
Yeah.
So, and I knew very little about my mother. And when my father left, I was grief-stricken by it, so I didn't speak about him much. Because I was angry by it. Because I was doing everything in my power to hold on to my relationship with my father. So he couldn't do bad. No amount of bad could he do when I turned my back on him, because I was holding on to him in light of the fact I didn't have my mother. So despite his transgressions, everybody else may have judged him, but I just did what I could do to let him know that I embraced him. And so when he left, I was plagued by it, because as much as I forgave him for whatever he did wrong, it still wasn't enough. He still wound up leaving.
Yeah. Well, what was it like to meet your mother for the first time? I mean, you were 17, right?
Yeah. It was kind of wild. I met my mother through Dennis Byron, all right, who's my publicist now. And I was walking down the block, teardrop on my eye, flag on my head, and he looked at me and was like, he's like, yo, your name is Michael.
What's the last primary school I taught? Never taught at a primary school, but the last class I gave was to 6 middle school students, and I showed them how to create art like this. When the last time you taught somebody to do something?
And I'm like, all right, lucky guess. You know, I'm in my own world. And he had just moved into the community I was in. At that time, I moved to the 90s. That's like on Rutland Road, Brooklyn, New York, Southern Rutland Road. I was living on Rockford Park between West and Rutland. But I was in the 90s. That's what we called it, the 9 house. And so what happened was, I bumped into him walking down the block. He said I looked too much like my mother, too much like my father, like I was a perfect composite of the two. So phenotypically, he just presumed I had to be his sister's son, right? So this is my mother's brother. And in turn, he was like, look, I can introduce you to your mother. And of course, I didn't give that up. I didn't went to psychologists. I used to cry. I went through a 6-month stretch of crying for my mother. I was really grief-stricken by it. So at this age, being told that someone could take me to my mother that I bumped into randomly walking down the block, I was ready to hurt this man for messing with my emotions.
Yeah.
And he couldn't even believe how rough and rugged I looked at the time, that his sister's son was out there gangbanging and everything. So I built with him long enough and he convinced me, but I didn't see my mother the first week that he told me about her. I was reluctant to do so because I was just thinking about it and couldn't really figure it out. So then the following week, I actually took him up on the offer and I saw my mother. And
Motherfucker, you can't even speak correct English. What the fuck? First of all, how the hell you ever gonna see me? And second of all, if you ever see me, you won't see me. Get it? You be the one missing.
I guess, right?
Yeah. I could report you to Facebook. Fucking PlayStation for that shit. But I'm not a dickhead. But I will blast you on social media for saying something stupid like that. And have everybody make fun of you for the fucking clown you are.
It was overwhelming because one of the first things she asked was if my family still lived in the area that I was presently living in. Now that hurt me because that meant that my mother could have saw me any
Yeah,
day.
she knew where you were and
You
she
feel
didn't
me?
see you, yeah.
So that really bothered me the most, that she even knew where I lived at while I was crying all them days, you know, making cards out to males and females for Mother's Day, you know. So but when I seen her, I seen someone who looked like me, because every day I was walking down the block looking at women, wondering if the ones that look like me or the ones I look like, could it possibly be my mother?
Right.
So the day finally arrived. The woman I've been crying for all these years, I actually got a chance to see her, and she didn't have her hair on her head, you know? She was wearing a wig, but, you know, the wig came off, and I realized she was sick. Now, no one told me she was sick when I was going to see her. They said it was too hard to tell me. But, you know, so now I'm shocked completely. I'm seeing my mother for the first time, 17 years old, and she has no hair, and I'm learning that she's on her way out. And of course, I couldn't conceive she would be leaving inside of 7 days. I thought I had some time to play with, so I took my time in getting to learn her. And then she had a son that wasn't from her father.
Wow.
So
you had a half brother.
I could never really connect with him. Like, even to this day, only because I matured more, I've been able to communicate with him. But at the time, I was way too immature, and I was just overwhelmed by so much. I had a case, you know. I'm used to no one being there for me for the most part. My sister was doing time at some point or the other. She was doing a minimum year and a day from stabbing somebody and hustling and all this other stuff. So I was taking care of her son, my little nephew, to make sure he doesn't get caught in the system while I'm a child myself. So I've learned to kind of make it happen. I managed to wind up getting some kind of house, working out a deal, paying somebody off. And so I had a complex, like I don't really need nobody, right? But I broke down when I saw my mother, because I looked like her, but the sick version. That's what I was looking at, and I wasn't prepared to see that. So to not see somebody that created you, the womb from which you derived, and then to find out no sooner than you meet them, they're gonna exit again. It crushed me, you know. And it developed a lot of psychosis for the most part in me that would take a lot of years for me to really understand or assimilate, granted the information that I was confronted with later.
Absolutely, man. It's definitely a very, very hard story to even listen to. So, at what point did you start actually joining a gang and joining the Crips?
That happened early. I was coming from 94th Street in Rutland Road. There used to be a bar over there. I was mad young. I used to always go to the bar. I was always allowed in it. The hood let me be there, right? And it's real cool. What happened was, not too long prior, my man's was making fun of me because they was talking about their sexual engagements with women. And, you know, I was trying to play along, but they could tell, like, I never really had sex. So they started making fun of me, and I'm like, yo, I had sex before, you know? I had sex with women before. So they like, yeah, you got your head done. You know, they asked me questions, right? How did you feel? And after a while, they was like, man, we know you BSing. So they found the neighborhood freak and got me on the rooftop. It's freezing out there. My ass cheeks freezing. I don't know what to do. You know, I came quicker than a motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know what to do. You know, I just said, yo, we got to stay up here for a little while. So I wound up building with the sister for a long period of time. And, you know, came out, my chest protruded, acting like, you know, I put in pain. And so, you know, to convince the homies. And I wound up having a little something relationship with her. And she taught me a lot. I didn't know what I was doing. But I always connected with that sister because she helped me through the corridors of manhood. I didn't have a father teach me about sex around me.
Yeah.
You know, at 8 it's kind of early, right? So, and I definitely didn't have a mother around. And then I didn't have no parents in general at a certain point, being in the group home, in the shelter, juvenile detention. So, my path, I didn't have adults around me really teaching me. All I had was people in the streets teaching me. So at that point, needless to say, the hood was responsible for me getting out the V spot, so to speak. Thanks to the hood, I actually had sex. So I always embraced the hood. My milestones came from gang members, right, in my life. So that had me in a space where I'm like, yo, I'm really about to join these brothers. I got me some ass on the strength. Dealing with them, they put me en route. So that was one thing. Then later on, what happens is they would allow me to go to their parties where, it used to be kind of like a strip club, so to speak, but ghetto, basement bashes. So it'd be basement parties in the 90s, very dangerous shit. However, there was like opportunities for prostitution in there, and I would help collect the money. I was young, but I was so cool with the homies that they let me collect the money, turn it over, the women do their thing. So that's what I'm growing up in. And so that relationship strengthened too, because I started making a little money. And so I was allowed to go to this bar over here on 94th Street, Rutland Road, with a lot of good people, and from the hood, of course. And in turn, I was walking home one night. I just got this chain. I spent $550 on it. It was on layaway for like forever. I laid it away at downtown Brooklyn, Nevin Street. This is our shopping area in Brooklyn, right? And it was like a dog chain with diamond cuts in it, Gucci link, and I'm just feeling myself. I'm in like the craziest hood, between going back and forth between Brownsville, where I'm from, the Brownsville houses, and then coming over here to the 90s. It was like the worst hood to try to wear jewelry. But, I'm in the in part of the crowd, so I'm like, I'm good. The way we asserted ourselves was if you tuck your chain in, that you was ass. So my chain is out. I gotta make a public statement. It looks good and it's out, so I must be connected. That's the mentality. So it's late, and I get this sense I should tuck my chain. You know what I'm saying? I'm only like 12 going on 13. Knicks just lost. I think Ewan messed up the finger roll or something. I was in there because of a Knicks game for sure. So I left after the Knicks game was over. So I'm walking home, and somebody's like walking behind me, and I look back. That vibe, if the jug ever got pulled on you, when you look back again, they closer, right? You know what I'm saying? So then next time I turn around, he's like, yo, run that chain. And I'm like, yo, I just bought this. And I didn't know what to say. Like, I literally had
make a difference.
Like 72 hours. Like, I didn't have it long.
Right.
And then he took the gun and shoved it in my mouth. My chip's still tooth to this day. So I'm like 13 years old when this happens. Shoved it in my mouth. And he's like, yo, you stupid. Next time, just run your shit. And he popped it off my neck, right? So he runs down the block. I look, and it's a little old black man watching. I look again, and I see a sister in the car watching. And then I see somebody across the street watching. And I'm like infuriated. And all these people are older than me, and nobody said nothing, right? So I figured they was too scared to say something, right? So that was the crossroads for me. That's when I decided I don't got a mother, I don't got a father, and I had adults around me that watched me, had a gun to my mouth, and no one had the heart to say, let's save the life of this young man.
Right, because you could have gotten killed right there.
Could have got killed.
Yeah.
And granted, I'm older now, and I understand the fear that may have resonated with them when they seen the action. But as a young man, I've been disappointed by people older than me so much that I decided I wasn't going to be by myself again like that. So that's when I joined the Crips.
Right. And the Crips became your family.
Yeah, and I presumed the brother was a blood.
Really?
Yeah. Because at that time, you wasn't really going to be too flamboyant with the colors. It was intense in the 90s.
Yeah.
Brooklyn was real intense during that time. The gang culture was on the rise. I mean, I was around low lifes and baby Deceps, Decepticons, and everybody.
Yeah.
However, the climate of gang membership was on an all-time high in Brooklyn as far as the Bloods and Crips were concerned. So it was like to not be part of one was partially in part or by default being part of the gang in itself. So it was a matter of time before I was going to join anyway. So I joined the Crips, and from that point forward, I flourished. I always had to be a leader one way or another. It's in our DNA. So I just was leading people in the wrong direction. I worked my way up and put in some pain.
Now, you actually got arrested for attempted murder?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about that situation?
That's the last one, the most recent situation I went through. I was part of a community organization that one of my wives is the daughter of the leader of the community, and it was just a lot of trouble back and forth. The leader gave me one of the buildings to run, and it was just a lot of chaos. The children felt they should inherit the building of their father, and I'm here like, yo, the man gave me the building to run, and he gave me other responsibilities, and it was being overridden, and it was people in the community making sure that I don't get that space in leadership. They made my task very hard, and it created a great deal of contentions and the drama between the biological family and myself. It just wound up it started to escalate so much that in turn, when guns is being pulled out on people or people are threatening people, one of the brothers got shot in his head, and because I called for the meeting to have with the brother, and he got shot very shortly after the meeting. Of course, I was blamed for the shooting.
Okay.
I got locked up for it.
This was during your gangbanging days, or this was after?
I was still gangbanging, but I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
You know, because at that time, my teacher's the one that actually funded the teardrop to get off my eye. Like, he funded the laser surgery.
Oh, okay. So you had a teardrop where?
Right here.
Right there.
So
Okay.
he actually funded the laser surgery for it to be taken off. And, you know, for me to be a leader, he was like, yo, come on. You know what you doing? So I was still gangbanging, but I was more growing into the consciousness than the gang shit. And then trying to find a way to communicate to my brothers that pretty much raised me in gang culture since I was young. Like in my 13-year-old age, up until that time, like, yo, you know, coming to this consciousness, this guy is like phenomenal. So it's just a lot of conflict, man. There's a lot of conflict even in conscious communities and organizations, because everybody's trying to find themselves and establish their identity. And en route, we still have ghetto mannerisms and bad habits that in turn create more contention within ourselves than the people outside of us. And if we're not right inside, it's not going to be right outside. So all that kind of chaos was transpiring en route to more knowledge. You know, I just thought everybody was going to be perfect and righteous. I had no idea at the time that we still would have some of the same character flaws inside of great organizations that we were confronted with outside of great organizations.
So you get charged with attempted murder.
Yeah.
It goes to trial, or did they drop the charges?
I've never signed so much restraining orders in prison in my life, especially from people that was threatening me. You know, I thought that was, you know, I'm finding out the real names of people who had these gangster names that were threatening me when I was free. And now there was a bunch of restraining orders. That was a very new experience for me. Because this time I had problems with like people who are conscious. I had problems with people in the street. Stuff that I went through with conscious people was very interesting. So I'm locked up there. I wound up being released. I was locked up September 19th or something to that effect. But I wound up being released for that one, October 31st, Halloween. I didn't know I was going to be released. The brother refused to testify that got shot.
Oh,
so I heard.
He didn't get killed?
No, he just had a chunk of his body. I was locked up for dismemberment. First they locked me up for murder, then they changed it to attempted murder. You know, first they said he was dead, so I was in prison, so the word was he was dead, so I didn't know. And then they changed my case to attempted murder, which gave me more potential time than actual murder. Mm-hmm. Yeah, crazy. I actually was threatened with more time in prison for attempted murder than murder. So dismemberment and all sorts of other stuff. But needless to say, they tried to subpoena a lot of people. A lot of people wouldn't tell or speak on the event. And I just think it's a blessing because, you know, I'd say for the record, I'm innocent. You know what I'm saying? And it's a blessing because I already said I wasn't going to wind up in these kind of situations again. And I wind up in these situations again. And this time I was conscious. So I just knew I wasn't going to get into no more problems. And here I go again into the issue. So once this situation rolled over, and like I said, I got freed on October 31st. Once this situation rolled over, I really decided I had to separate myself a little more from the gangs, just to find myself before I could come back and communicate with them. Because a lot of that energy precipitated because of the company I was keeping while en route to learning.
Yeah. What made you really change your life from gang banging to try to live positively?
My first wife. Aminette Atunre, she visited me in prison. I was in Rikers Island at the time, and we just had this baby girl. That was the promise. She was like, look, you gotta chill out, you know.
This is your first child?
My first child, Ma'at Hotep Atunre. So I'm in prison. This is so demeaning.
Okay, and this is a different case you're in prison for?
Yeah.
Okay, and what was this case for?
It was for murder. I was being accused of murder.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I was just living a wild life.
Okay, and what exactly was the situation around that case?
Oh, I had a lot of, it was a lot of gang contentions in Brooklyn. I had beef with people across the street from me in Brooklyn. So I'm on Rockaway Parkway between Winthrop and Rutland, and I have a shootout going on between the people across the street, my neighbors, in my street. So anybody that's in Brownsville at that time, 90s, or Rockaway Parkway in the 90s, everybody knows about it. And so there was a shootout between people on my side of the street and people on the other side of the street. And of course I'm implicated because I'm just known. So I was implicated in that as well. And so I'm locked up, and my wife comes in with my daughter, Ma'at. She's like a baby. And my daughter hugs me. She's never hugged no one before. She's a baby. So her first gesture to hug somebody happened in prison, and it was me, her father. And that's when I started hitting the holy books, right? I'm like, yo, send me my prayer book. I got to come up with something. Everything was out of my power, right? I don't have the same interpolation of God that many people have. Nonetheless, I knew I had to confide in something outside of myself that is also a part of me to connect with. So I asked her to get me this gold book that the master teacher had wrote. And I said, I'm going to commit these prayers to memory, the ones that resonate with me most, that correspond with this moment. And I just prayed, and I just prayed, and I just prayed, you know, connected with the universe. And I said, man, if the first step is me getting out, but I said, I'll listen to whatever comes my way. You know, I'll listen. I don't know what it is. So I wound up coming home. And what happened was, my wife, when I came home, she said, I want you to quit hustling. I'm like, okay, how are we going to do that? Because I've managed to get a house. You know, nothing's in my name. You know, I'm riding dirty. I got cars. I ain't got no license. I'm making it happen, though. I'm feeling myself. Right. So I dropped out of school already. I dropped out 10th grade. And I'm like, how you expect me to keep up everything I got going on? Well, she said, I got 2 jobs for you while you was in prison. 1 check is for you and 1 check is for me. And it obviously is not going to amount to what you used to making in the streets. Now, my wife at this time meant a lot to me because she was extremely ghetto. Extremely. So I can't have a conversation with her about her raising her voice, using vulgarity, or even inflicting injury to me, right? So for her to arrive at this particular point in her life, where this ratchet sister would decide that I'm willing to work 2 jobs, this paranoid sister, the sister who thinks I'm cheating left and right all the time, for her to decide that she's willing to divulge her time or invest her energy into 2 jobs and give me 1 check until I find myself. And if need be, she'll give me some of the other check. It's a true story. I was elated and flabbergasted all at the same time. And so I said, I'm going to give it a trial run because you're going to turn on me eventually. I know it. But I'll fall back. If you keep working those 2 jobs and giving me 1 check, I'm going to find my way. I'll do it. So I made that deal with her. And, you know, I snuck a couple times and still sold some crack. I mean, I was making weight at that particular time, so people can cop the work from me as well. So I reduced myself to trying to sell a little crack on the side because I still had stuff left. At least I wanted to get that off before I completely stopped. Yeah. So, I mean, she yelled at me. She caught me a couple times, but I ran out and I didn't re-up. And so 6 months stretch, all I did was read the books she kept buying me. And she just kept feeding me books for 6 months straight. I barely went outside. I went and cut my fingernails. I started growing my hair. And people was like, yo, you letting yourself go. What happened? You falling off. I wasn't into the clothes no more. I was just trying to find myself because I promised her this is what I was going to do in my life.
Well, you guys have a baby now.
Yeah.
So the focus of your life is now completely different for the both of you.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
And I changed. That's how I got conscious.
Yeah.
When I saw that she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, it scared me. And I realized I had to find a way to access what she saw in me.
You talked about religion.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned before in another interview is the most destructive thing that's taken place in the black community has been the religions that's always been introduced to us.
That's a fact.
Explain that.
Well, oftentimes when we look at religion, they don't give us an opportunity to study the historicity of the place or the geographical locale from which the information derives. I oftentimes find that many of the religions that our people make subscriptions to, they was confronted with those religions in light of them being oppressed by the very people who presented the information to them. And when I ask people, when was the Islam introduced to us as a people? Or when was the Christianity introduced to us as a people? Or when was the Judaism introduced to us as a people? Or just the books in general? We oftentimes find that it was introduced to us while being in a state of servitude. And when I ask, can you show me when it's introduced to our people, void of being in a state of servitude, it's moot. The opportunity to suggest to me otherwise is moot. When we do a philological perusal of these corpus, religious corpus, or these texts, and we ask, like if the Quran says that Allah gives you the book in this language or Arabiya, it sounds great. But then when we undergo the philology of the corpus, we find that the contents of the book was written before the language evolved. So there's no Quranic Arabic, right? Before the Quran, there's the Quran first, and it's written in Syriac. And we even look up the words, and if we go into the etymology of these words, or we do a thorough philological perusal, we see that it was written in Karshuni, which means they didn't have all the letters to transmit the information in Arabic because it didn't evolve yet. So they borrowed other people's scripts or figures or characters in order to transliterate the information. And in turn, we see that if we go into the Christian language, right, we'll see if we study the Peshitta, New Testament, written in Syrian, right, not written in the Greek that many people think the New Testament is originally written. We see that Christians called on Allah first before Muslims called on Allah. His name is in there several times. The Christians worshipped Allah before Muslims were even spoken of. And in fact, there's no documentation of a Muslim until hundreds of years after Prophet Muhammad's death. We don't see no documentation or acknowledgement about Prophet Muhammad's life until 200 years after his death. Doesn't mean that he didn't exist. It just means if I try to sell you a story that exists 200 years thereafter, you would think it's suspect. But with religion, we pacify that. We'll be also told that Prophet Muhammad was illiterate, but the Most High gave him a scripture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would grant this man a scripture. His angel Gabriel will come and tell him to ikra, or to read.
You know what's the funniest thing though? Right now, at this very moment, I'm the most entertaining thing you have in your life. Like, you need me right now. Think about it. It's good to feel that need, don't it? I'm happy I can fulfill it for you. Because there is nothing else for you in this whole entire world right now. There is nothing else for you other than me. I'm all you have. So soak it up, enjoy it, because I gotta go to work. I'm not gonna be here much longer, so you're gonna miss me for the rest of the day. But don't be scared to subscribe to my channel and follow me on PlayStation, because you're gonna be back in here. You're gonna want to see what this painting looks like when it's done. I think I just made a new friend, guys. His English is kind of but I think he's ready to learn. The last masterpiece is finished. This thing looks awesome. So I'll be shipping this out in a couple of days to its new home. And I'll probably try to start some new canvases later today or something when I get off, hopefully. But thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.